Thank you so much for taking time to talk to us and to speak with Stammer about the huge success of the documentary last night. It was trending on Twitter. We had masses of comments on Facebook. Even Stammer's web chat and helpline had a massive increase. I think it's like 364% just last night alone. What did the reaction? How did it surprise you?
It's been completely overwhelming, really overwhelming. In a very positive sense. And the reaction on social media has been absolutely amazing. I haven't been able to keep up with it, but I'm reading every single message, and I've had people tweeting me saying that they're tweeting me to tell me about their summer. They've never told anyone else. It is really amazing, and the conversation does seem to have started properly, which is just exactly what we wanted. And I'm so glad the documentary has gone some way to do that. And I just hope we can carry it on.
It was amazing. So, we've had we just got the viewing figures in this morning, and 2.6 million people in England alone. And nowadays, a lot of people catch up on iPlayer, and I'm trying to find out what the figures were like. It was shown later on in Scotland and Wales. Sorry, that's my dog. It was utterly. It has been unbelievable, the reaction. I've worked at the BBC for years, and you do get some stories which just tap into something, and you get a wave of response. And I know that Felicity, I hope won't mind me saying this, but was worried about the reaction, and she was so brave putting herself out there, and it's such an exposing thing to do. And I have reassured her for weeks and weeks and weeks that she would have nothing but positive comments, and she didn't believe me. And I was laughing with her this morning. I mean, we have read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments, and there's nothing negative at all. And it was just so well received. And it just feels really important to have lifted the lid on something that was so hidden. And really, I'm really proud of what we did.
Absolutely. I mean, Sophie, what surprised you speaking to all of those different people who stammered? This was your first experience, first kind of foray into the stammering community.
I knew nothing about it at all. Absolutely nothing about it until October last year, when Felicity and I had our initial chat in the newsroom, and I just kept asking her questions, and she really was physically kind of going like this in a chair the more I asked her. I remember it vividly. And I often ask too many questions, and I did say to her, "Are you all right with me asking these questions?" And she said, I think so, and we kept going. And I think what has surprised me, actually, I just found it fascinating. I think the exhaustion. I remember saying that to Felicity very early on. It must be exhausting, just constantly thinking. It's amazing. You appreciate me, and I know lots of people have lots of things going on in their lives that you never know about, but it's amazing when you realize that somebody who you think you know pretty well has a whole nother level inside their head that you weren't aware of. And the other thing that has surprised me and surprised Felicity, I know, is how common the experience of stammering is, but yet how isolating it is and how few people talk about it. So all the issues that we talked about, even the name we came out, I remember coming out with that name, I Can't Say My Name. And I said to Felicity, let's call it I Can't Say My Name, because of the initial conversation we'd had. And also stammering in the spotlight. And that was, I don't think Felicity realized at the time when we decided to call it that the people we were going to talk to also couldn't say their name and also struggled with it. And that has been amazing, just watching such similar experiences from so many people come together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Felicity was hugely brave. I almost sort of hold back from saying brave, because it's an integral part of who you are, but it's very exposing for something that you've been so private about. What was it like to go so public, prime time on the BBC, talking about something that you've been keeping hidden?
It has felt very exposing. It definitely hasn't been easy. I was remembering when we were, there's a line quite near the start of the documentary where I just say I had this chance conversation with Sophie Raworth, and I revealed my secret, I have a stammer. And saying those 4 words, it took me ages to be able to say them. I couldn't even say it, let alone in front of her, in front of the team members. So it sounds such a small thing, but even for me to just say those words out loud was a really, really big deal. So I honestly can't actually believe that we've done it, and just what we've achieved. So yeah, I mean, it's been a real journey, and it's kind of been a complete whirlwind. I mean, I've kind of gone from never talking about it to suddenly talking about it all the time to pretty much everyone, and it has felt quite liberating in a way. But yeah, I honestly can't put it into words, but I mean, it's been absolutely amazing, and it has been so nice. I think the documentary, just the people we met making that documentary, the contributors were all amazing, and I can't remember the last time I sat down with another woman like Grace and I just said, I do this, and she said, I do it too. And we just had this, you know, I forgot the cameras were there. We were just talking for an hour about, do you do this? Yeah, I do exactly. It was amazing. I never get to have those conversations. So that is, you know, that was something really important to me, and, you know, probably the most important thing I've taken away from this.
It's definitely brave what she's done. I know, I totally understand what you were saying about, you know, you've got to be yourself, but there's a whole nother level. I mean, it's frightening going on live television. We did a round of interviews ahead of this on the day. I have seen the fear. I mean, Felicity does not look frightened when she's on television. She is terrified. And I've sat with her through all of them, either with her on air or next to her when I wasn't being interviewed. And brave is utterly, utterly brave, because it's one thing saying, okay, this is who I am, and I completely understand that, your point, and doing that at work in front of your colleagues. It is another thing putting yourself out there on a platform in front of millions of people, and particularly in this day and age when you get so many people, you know, piling in on Twitter and social media and having their opinion, and you feel very open and very exposed to criticism. So to go out there and do what she's done is extraordinary.
And do you think that's why it's still so, you know, it's quite rare to be talking about stammering. It's really rare to be making programs about stammering. I mean, there's such a kind of momentum at the moment about, you know, not least of all because we've got, you know, Joe Biden as the president of the United States, and you sort of document and, you know, show that kind of global interest and the incredible personal story. But it's still really rare to see and hear stammering on the TV. Why is that?
Good question. I mean, I completely agree, and that's why I think when we got the chance to do this, we jumped at it, even though for me it was a very scary prospect. But I always kind of promised myself when I started the BBC, if I ever got a chance to raise awareness of stammering, I would take it. But I feel like you never really see realistic portrayals of it, because stammering is a very individual experience for everyone who stammers. We all have completely separate experiences, and that's what we really want to get across in the program. Is we just want to show people who stammer the realities of what it's like and their own individual stories. And I don't know why we don't hear more about it. I'd love to hear more about stammering, and I really hope that can change now.
I think it's because people don't talk about it, and I think that you know, Felicity and I've been reading through some of the messages we've got, and the number of people who say, you know, I'm in my 50s, my 60s, my 40s, I've never spoken about it before. I've hidden it, even from those closest to me. I've hidden it from them. And I think if you don't talk about it, there's no understanding of it, and therefore the portrayal. I was very struck by, you know, somebody said something at the weekend about the portrayal about stammering until now has very much been either something to be pitied or something to be overcome. And somebody also messaged us yesterday saying, it's so nice to see a different approach to stammering. It wasn't the let's start at the beginning and by the end we'll overcome it, which is absolutely not what we were doing. We were trying to just portray what it is like when inside somebody's head, really, who stammers, what impact it has on their lives. But because there's so little understanding out there about it, and because so few people who stammer, and particularly people who manage to hide it, because people don't talk about it, there isn't the understanding. So I suppose it's a sort of level of acceptance that needs to be talked about more.
And of course, I guess this program would never have happened unless I wouldn't have spoken about it if we hadn't had that one conversation in the newsroom, and then you hadn't kind of, you know, really.
There's a lot of coercion.
On the television,
I absolutely would not have done any of it without Sophie. She kind of supported me and told me I can do it the whole way. There's no way I would have done it without that huge amount of support. So it is really hard, and I think that is a really good point, that people who stammer don't talk about it. And I wouldn't have, I would have been very unlikely to speak about it unless we'd kind of had that conversation last year.
So I want to push you on this point, because you're both journalists, you're both in the media, And you're right, what was so refreshing about the programme was there wasn't a pity narrative. It wasn't about overcoming. And often when, certainly when I've been interviewed, when, friends have been interviewed, or people who were prepared to talk about their stammers publicly, when the researcher calls you, all they want to hear about is public humiliation as an adult or bullying as a child, and then insert any cure you can think of, whether it's you discovered opera, or there was something miraculous that gave you a cure, and then there's a kind of uplifting bit at the end and the person triumphs and the stammer is defeated. I mean, the media from a stammering community's perspective is absolutely honed in on that victim narrative. How can we move it away?
Speak more open. I mean, talk more. But that requires an awful lot of courage on behalf of people who hide it. But I think it's just something that needs to be spoken more openly. I mean, my approach was absolutely not. My interest was absolutely not in seeing what she had, overcoming. It was not something to be pitied. It was not to be overcome. I was absolutely fascinated by what goes on inside Felicity's head when she's having a conversation with me. The fact that she wouldn't, I couldn't believe that she said to me, I never use the phone. And I was thinking, oh my God, I've spent the whole year calling you. I always pick the phone up. I always ring people. And I now know why every time I ring her, she laughs. She always laughs when I ring her. I think I'm the only person who does ring her. But it's things like that. It was just the impact. I just find it fascinating, the impact on people's lives. But who knows? Maybe people will talk about it more, but it's difficult. It's a difficult one to, I suppose it's difficult to frame, but it should just be accepted, really, shouldn't it? And I loved our contributors. I loved, Big Heath, our rapper, saying, don't finish my sentence. And the number of people who've since been in touch with us today saying, I never knew that. And, I won't finish their sentence anymore. And that's absolutely, thank God I know that. And other people, which I found really moving, people who we know, who've been in touch with people who, from teachers from years ago, who had a stammer and they behaved badly in class, and I know somebody who got in touch with the teacher from decades ago, and I hope that what we did yesterday was just gives more understanding to it, I think, and that's what I suppose that's what it is. It's just a start for people to understand what it is like, and I understand it much better than I did, but I hope that other people begin to too.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I've had people getting in touch saying, oh, I honestly thought stammering was caused by nerves and all these things. And I was kind of saying in the interviews, it's common misconceptions. I don't think people really understand whether that's because, because we haven't spoken about it enough. But I think once the understanding increases, then things hopefully will move in a more positive direction.
And your documentary absolutely, helps that. So it's, it's really great. Felicity, you and Sophie, you were touching on it then, the huge amount of work that goes in to remaining fluent in terms of either avoidance or word substitutions, or just trying to that kind of mental gymnastics in order to remain or be perceived as fluent. What would it take you to drop your fluency techniques and stammer, or some people might say speak freely, at work?
For me, well, I mean, I've actually been doing it a bit since we've done this documentary. I think it's taken a bit of the pressure off me, or I should say the pressure I put on myself. It's always pressure I put on myself to appear fluent, but I've perhaps released some of that, and I have stammered more at work in the last month than I have in the entire 10 years I've worked at the BBC. So I don't know. I'm not sure I ever will. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to stop avoiding. It is, that's how I do it. I work in a busy newsroom. I use avoidance techniques because it's easier for me in that moment. So I don't know, but I have been open about it. If people come up and talk to me about it, I will talk. I will, like I say, I'll take a bit of the pressure off myself, and we'll just see how it goes, really.
And we heard Mandy Taylor on Women's Hour, talking about how she can't hide her stammer. Do you think the challenges faced by people who stammer overtly or audibly is very different from people who stammer internally?
I think it's just a very individual experience, stammering. I mean, everyone, my experience of stammering is not the same as anyone else's. So yes, of course, but I mean, all I can talk about really is my own personal experience, and that's kind of all I did in the documentary. I was just explaining, what my experience of stammering had been, and just how I get through the day, basically. But yeah, of course, it's fascinating to hear from people who stammer in all types of ways, and I think we did cover that in the documentary. That was what's so interesting about it. There were people like me who do use avoidance techniques and hide words, and there were people who stammered quite audibly as well. And we kind of heard from that range of voices, which was really important.
And we had the first ever celebration of stammering in the arts. And I wanted to talk to you about that because you both attended. It was organised by Rob Coe and the Cambridge Stammering Support Group. And it was the first time we really brought together this really diverse mix of music and poetry and arts, and talking about stammering in the media. Sophie, what did you think about that? What was it like to kind of get a window into all the creativity in the stammering community?
I felt very comfortable. I mean, I knew it was just like continuing what we were already doing. It didn't feel like I was being given a window on something I didn't know about. So I already knew about Helen Rutter, who'd written a book, and I loved talking. I thought Gina Rose, who joined us from California, was, she was extraordinary. And the way that she talked, I mean, she was extraordinary. Mostly, the thing that I thought was so impressive was that she, as doing her own film, and has self-financed it and directed it and produced it and released it and everything. And I just, it was an incredible achievement alongside her own job.
She's a powerhouse.
She is amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
But also that she just spoke so openly about stammering and how she'd hidden it from her family, and they didn't know either, and that she'd managed to hide it, and now she decided to speak more freely. But that, again, there's the stories that we heard, and the painter we spoke to, and Paul, and all the people we spoke to, there's still, as I was saying before, there's still the same themes and the same stories and the same experience that we have spent the last 6 weeks exploring and putting into our documentary. So in that sense, I felt it was lovely to be there. I felt very at home. And it was just also, I mean, there were a couple of comments from people who were watching the one about that, and that really sort of struck home what we were doing. Somebody did message us during that conference and talked about the fact that it was nice to see stammering not portrayed as something to be pitied or something to be overcome. And that for me was great, because I suddenly thought, ahead of promoting our documentary, I thought, actually, that's exactly what we have done. We've gone down the middle. We're not doing either of those things. We're going straight down the middle. So that was really useful. But no, it was absolutely fascinating. It was a really interesting discussion.
And could you see it being something like that being broadcast on the TV?
What, the debate or
the celebration, the kind of celebration of stammering? We have International Women's Day. We have, some really great kind of spotlights on different pockets of diverse creativity.
I think it would be brilliant to see, just not to make a particular issue as we have of stammering. It'd be great just to sort of have that included in a mix of absolutely everything else. I think what you don't want to do, and I don't think we want to do, and I don't think Felicity wants to do, she doesn't want to be sort of pocketed as the filmmaker, the presenter, the producer who stammers. That's just part of our job, my job, her job. We've done this program, which we're all really proud of. But likewise, I think people who are in the arts who stammer, it shouldn't be an issue that they stammer. It's like Gina Rose, as I said to you, the thing that impressed me about her was her film. The stammer and her experience I find equally interesting. The thing that impresses me about Felicity is her work at the BBC as a producer. The stammering interests me, but it's not the first. It's not the label, as it were. It's not the first thing.
One of the highlights of the celebration was the speech by John T. Claypole, the outgoing BBC Director of Arts, and he argued that people who stammer, it was quite quite interesting. He was arguing that people who stammer are more creative, and that that stammering culture, just as you've just described, Sophie, has always been at the heart of society's most creative expressions. And it's either not been talked about, or it's not the primary element. Actors like Samuel L. Jackson, or, as you say, Helen Rutter, who bought her book recently, or Lewis Carroll, or David Mitchell. What really interested me when hearing from Jonty is that kind of undercurrent of experience about having a stammer and how it might inform that art form, even in a kind of really subtle way. Felicity, as a producer, do you think the way you go about making programs or talking to people and encourage them to either participate or kind of get them organized for the programs that you make, do you think that is shaped by your speech?
I mean, I don't think so necessarily. I think stammering, and this is something that came from our interviews, stammering, I think it's made me a more empathetic person. I think it's definitely improved me as a person, and I'm very proud of that. But so I think that possibly does help me when I speak to guests. I'm much more aware, I'm very aware of other people. I want to make sure they're comfortable, they're happy before we kind of do anything. So maybe it does subconsciously, but it's not something I think about, all the time. I'm just doing my job, I guess. But yeah, I mean, there could be an element of it.
And did you think, Sophie, that at some point we'd be able to hear someone stammer openly while presenting a flagship TV program like the BBC News? Do you think that would be possible?
Not that's I've no. Do you know what? I don't know, because that's not my. I mean, it's not my. I never have to make the decisions. It's not. That's above my pay grade. But I just think I'm really pleased that we got the program we got on last night on primetime television. I mean, the process of getting this program together has been unbelievable. We did it in 6 weeks, which normally you make a primetime BBC One documentary. You have months of planning, you have a whole team, you have a budget. We were asked about 7 weeks ago if we thought we could turn Felicity's piece in January into, which was 3 minutes long on the 6 o'clock and the 10 o'clock news, if we could turn that into a 13-minute piece to go on the on the news channel, one afternoon. And I sort of thought, we could go into I think we can do half an hour. So it was going on the BBC News channel, and we were so pleased with what we were getting. And I suddenly thought, this is not something that's been out there in the mainstream, and it's really important to get out there. So we got in touch with the bosses on BBC One. I emailed them, and they came back to me a few weeks later, and all of a sudden we had a prime time slot. 5 of us have made this program in the space of 6 weeks. And we've done a lot of it on our days off, a lot of it in our own spare time. It's cost us very little. Well, I haven't told the BBC bosses that yet, but it costs very little to make. And I think it was great. We got a program about stammering on primetime BBC One, and that's as far as I've been able to go, or achieve as much as I've been able to achieve so far. But I'm really proud that we managed to do even that.
It's amazing.
And will we see more presenting from you, Felicity? Has this kind of whet your appetite to come out from behind the camera?
Well, I was saying to Sophie, it's stressful having to worry about what you look like all the time, and your hair, and all these things. That
God! How many times have you asked me about your hair?
I never worry.
I just say to her, brush it. It'll be fine. Brush it.
That's my main thing about presenting, is that normally I just don't care, but we'd go and film, it'd be raining, I'd be like, no, I'm not, this is going to ruin my hair. I really enjoyed it. It was a challenge, but it was amazing, and I absolutely loved it. So watch this space.
She's a natural. I do wonder if your stammering actually has helped you, because actually what really struck me just watching her do the interviews, when yesterday we literally did breakfast, woman's hour, radio too. I mean, we did everything, and I was with her before, and the fear. She was terrified. She basically was terrified, absolutely terrified. And yet, when she's on air, you'd never know. You would absolutely never know how frightened she was. And I do wonder whether you've learnt, to conceal stuff so well that you maybe you will make a very natural presenter, you see, because that's my life too. And you talk about being a swan and paddling underneath. That was how you explain what stammering is like. That's my life reading the news. I have to be really, calm and everything's under control. And what you can't hear is what's going on in my ear when they go, we haven't got the piece, it's not there. And I'm going like this, just keep calm. So maybe, there's a sort of, I had an element of empathy there, but maybe you've got what it takes, Felicity. I think you're rather natural at
it. Thank you very much.
And the listening, the ability to hear and kind of get underneath the real issue, I think, is something that people who stammer often, are often told that they're really good listeners, and they're really good at kind of spotting body language or the kind of unspoken things. I mean, it just feels like that's a natural fit for a journalist, and kind of, curiosity about people and about stories.
Oh, absolutely. I think the best thing about journalism, what I love about it, is you just get to talk to people, interesting people all the time, and that's sort of initially why I wanted to go into it, because I just thought I want my job to just be going out and speaking to people who are making the news, and so this documentary has been kind of the best part of my job. It's why I started doing this, and I've just just the people we've spoken to have really just made the whole experience.
So what's next? You kind of inferred that this was something something that might kind of grow into something bigger. Are you, Sophie, how has this experience changed you? You feel like a really strong advocate for people who stammer now.
I'm firstly absolutely exhausted. That's my main job. I have been doing my main job, my normal job, alongside this for weeks now. And my children have said to me, one of my teenagers said to me the other day, Mum, can you not do this producing thing anymore? Because you're always on the phone. So yeah, that's how that's.
So you're keen to swap back. You're really keen to swap
honestly,
back.
I'm exhausted. I'm quite tired. I'm keen to have a rest, first of all. I don't know what we'll do now. That's the third thing that Felicity and I have done together, and we work really well together. And I'm sure we've got plenty of other ideas, and we'll come up with other things. Hopefully, I really enjoyed making programs. So I like the creativity of it, and I like the sort of narrative and telling the story, and I didn't have to worry about my hair and makeup. That was liberating. I went to Michael Palin's house in my running kit and ran home afterwards. It was great. So no, it's been really good. It's been really good. But I don't know what we'll do afterwards. I know Felicity doesn't want to be sort of pigeonholed, as she wants to do other stuff. She's a very, very good BBC producer, so she's got plenty of other things she wants to do.
Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely. I can't wait for the next project. But I'm like Sophie. I'm exhausted. So I'm gonna take a week to just kind of take in everything that's happened, and then we'll think of something.
Well, selfishly, certainly within the Stammering Hakka community, we're just so thrilled to have such a beautiful representation, and for the first time, sort of fair representation of what it's like to stammer, and all the different kind of quirks and individual experiences that people have. So it's just fabulous to have something like that to point to. And even my mum watched it and said, I'm really proud to have you as a stammerer, as someone who has a stammer, which was cute, which was really cute. I'm pushing the point for Felicity about sort of your own individual journey about stammering. 10 years ago you joined the BBC. You were keen not to let anybody know that you stammered. 10 years later, it's just through a chance tweet for International Stammering Awareness Day that you built that connection with Sophie and started to talk more openly. And then meeting all these people, and you talked about being taken aback that there are these weird things that we all think are sort of individual to us, and kind of quirks that we've come up with, and then you discover that other people do them. I mean, what's next for your journey as a person who stammers? Are you keen to learn more about it, or kind of meet different people, or join groups or networks?
I honestly, I haven't kind of thought ahead in any kind of way. I'm still kind of reeling from everything that we've done, and I'm just taking in the reaction. And honestly, I haven't even thought. I'm just gonna continue doing what I do and kind of see what happens, really. But I haven't kind of got any specific plans in place. I just kind of want, it'll take me all of this a while to sink in, I think, and I'm just so proud that we've done it and that we've given, people who stammer a voice. And I'm so glad that we've done this project. So yeah, I'll just have to wait and see.
Well, I was contacted this morning by several people who lead social media kind of closed groups and kind of communities for people who stammer. So I've got a long invite list. If you fancy joining any groups, they're all desperate to have you.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really amazing to hear. Well, yeah.
I've sort of reached the end of my list of stuff. Is there anything else you wanna share or you want to talk about? I mean, you've been talking about it non-stop, frankly. I mean, you're probably knackered and just want to stop talking about it.
I can't think of anything. Sophie, is there anything we've missed? I can't think of anything.
I have no idea. No, I think Felicity needs to go and get some sleep. That's
I haven't slept for 2 days, so I'm
been a bit short on sleep.
You're looking fresh for someone who hasn't slept.
I know. It's quite irritating, really. She's had no sleep for days and days and days. We literally spoke to each other yesterday morning at 5:30 in the morning. I could see she was awake on our WhatsApp. Oh, for heaven's sakes, I was awake too, mind you. But anyway, yes, I think it's we're all exhausted, so we need to sort of. I need to go to work, get today done, and then relax for a little bit, and then see what's next. But it's been I think it's anyway. I think this morning, the morning after the night before, massively proud of what we've done. Massively proud of Felicity because she's just been amazing. And I'd like to say I told you so, Felicity, because she wouldn't believe me. I was right, she wouldn't believe me. I said to her,
so the pushing worked. The pushing
worked. And I said to her, you are going to get nothing but positive response. And she wouldn't believe me and wouldn't believe me. And was I right?
The producer's always right.
This is true.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with us. It was just such a pleasure, and congratulations on such a brilliant documentary, which I'm sure will be shared and viewed many, 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 many more times for a long time now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's lovely to speak to you. So much.
Felicity yesterday stammered live on breakfast television, and she was brilliant though. She just went, there you go, you see.
So yeah, it is strange when you start talking about your stammer publicly. I blogged about it, and then people came up to me at work and they hadn't heard me stammer, and they came up and kind of stood beside me and said, "Oh, I read your blog. Wow, I had no idea."
What is it?
Kind of like, go on then. Let's see it,
No, you see, I bet they weren't though. I bet they weren't. And that's what Mark Jones kept saying to us, the rugby player. I bet they weren't. But then Mark Jones would say, a lot of it's amplified in your head. I bet they were just having a chat with you about it. But in your head, you're thinking they just want to hear it.
That'll do. Great. Thanks, everybody.
Right. Lovely to talk to you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.